Hi, this is Drucker and welcome to the second part of my live streaming and recording guide, which covers DXtory and XSplit. We'll be reconfiguring DXtory from functioning like fraps, in which DXtory records to the hard drive, and instead using it as a virtual camera for XSplit, which will then stream your in-game experience to providers like Twitch TV or Own3D.tv. I highly recommend reading the first part of the guide, which was written for the BitTech forums on technical.org. The link's in the description. It's also available on the BitTech forums under the software subforum. This will help you familiarize yourself with the software that we're going to use. First things first, we need to change a couple of settings in DXtory to make it stop recording to the hard drive when we hit F12, or whatever your respective recording hotkey is, and instead output what you see in-game to XSplit. There are only 2.5 options we need to change in order to make this possible. So the first thing we need to do is uncheck file output and make sure direct show output is checked. This will make DXtory work with XSplit. We also need to configure DXtory's video output settings, which you can find hidden in the bottom left panel of the program in the 4th button across. In this dialog box, you'll see a drop-down list with a number of resolutions in it. We want to set this to something that your computer or your internet bandwidth can handle. Most people will play in 1080p, but stream in 720p. To play and stream in 1080p, you need both a fantastic machine and an excellent upload speed, generally around 5 megabits consistently. For the sake of applying to the majority, we're going to set the resolution to 1280 by 720. Just type that in the width and height boxes there. If you've got an X79 motherboard with a 3930K processor and a GTX 680, feel free to set this to 1920 by 1080. We'll expand on these hardware and internet requirements later when configuring XSplit. What you also might do, this is the half option that I was talking about earlier. What you also might choose to do is not include your mouse cursor in your output. I choose to include it because I stream Dota 2, and sometimes it's really helpful to see that mouse cursor. The rest of DXtory's configuration should remain the same as that required for local recording. We don't really need to change anything else. Before we move on to the configuration of XSplit, you need to make sure that you've signed up for either Twitch.tv or Own3D.tv. These are the two premier free streaming providers for gaming. The rest of this guide assumes that you have an account with one of these sites. Configuring XSplit is a multifaceted process, and some aspects of it involve tailoring settings to your hardware and internet environment. This means we need to take into account how fast and powerful your machine is, and how fast and consistent your internet line's upstream connection is. To do this pretty easily, visit speedtest.net and keep your bandwidth in mind. The first thing we need to do in XSplit is configure its basic settings. We want to set the stage resolution under the View tab to 1280 by 720. We want to set the frame rate to 30 FPS, which is the same as our DXtory video settings output frame rate. We also want to set the scale viewport to actual, assuming you have a 1080p monitor. If you are streaming at 1080p rather than 720p, you might want to reduce the percentage so that XSplit takes up less of your desktop, say to 60%. All this does is make XSplit take up less of your desktop. It takes up more or less space. Once you've done this, we need to configure XSplit's general settings. Once you click Tools, General Settings, and the General tab, we want to make sure that under the top part of the dialog box, only the Disable Error Theme option is checked. Nothing else should be checked. Enable Skype interaction is currently bugged, although I'm told in the next update it will be fixed, but in this guide we won't be looking into that. What we do need to make sure of is that XSplit has correctly detected your microphone input and everything syncs up. We don't need to worry about the Recordings tab as we won't be recording with XSplit. All we're doing is streaming. If we click on the Channels tab and then click Add, you'll be able to choose from a bunch of common providers, specifically Own3D.tv and Justin/Twitch.tv are the two premier ones. And when you add these, you'll see the following dialog box. What you need to do is enter your username and password, And what XSplit will then do is connect to the streaming provider and find your channel, which you can then select. And you want to select the location that is closest to you to minimize your latency and maximize your bandwidth. In the video encoding box, we want to choose settings that are suitable for both your CPU and bandwidth. This is where the speedtest.net result comes in useful. Below, see the description for a link, is a table by Apoctv in which he compiles some recommendations for CPUs and encoding presets and internet bandwidth and bit rates. My CPU is a 2600K Sandy Bridge processor, and so I use the very fast preset. If I had the 3930K or 3960X, for example, I could get away with the fast preset, which is better quality. I don't think many CPUs currently available are capable of anything past that. Unless maybe if you had an EVGA SRX and 2 Xeons, you might get away with medium. My internet connection is also capable of monstrous upstream speeds greater than 40 megabits, so I can set my VBV bitrate to 3800 and my quality to 10. I could even get away with my bitrate being 20,000, but this would be massively overkill for 720p and even 1080p streaming, and obviously the viewers would have to have ridiculously fast connections to keep up. Your VBV max bitrate should always be the same as the VBV buffer. All Quality 10 does. Quality 10 is a sort of bitrate limiter, if you will. If you set it to 6, according to the XSplit forums and some reading I've done, it basically functions as a limiter for the maximum quality bitrate you can get. My audio quality is 44.1 kilohertz, 16-bit stereo, and 128,000 for the bitrate setting. You can choose to change this, but to be honest, it doesn't make that much of a difference. The codec should be AAC-LC rather than Speaks. If you're using the free version and have to use Speaks, I'm sorry for you, because the quality is terrible. You also want to have interleave audio and video on one RTMP channel checked. What this will do is ensure that both don't go out of sync. You definitely don't want automatically record broadcast checked, because Own3D.tv or Justin.tv will do this for you. Justin.tv does it automatically. Own3D.tv, you just have to click broadcast, select your live stream, and hit start record to do it. But we don't want XSplit doing it because it's just needlessly intensive. Once you've set all of this up, all you need to do is hit test bandwidth and ensure you're getting a green light. It'll show up with a dialog like this. And it'll take a few seconds and tell you whether you're good to go. Now that you've done this, you can configure your hotkeys, if you so wish, which will allow you to change between scenes in XSplit. Scenes essentially allow you to transition between content on your stream. You might place your gameplay in one scene and hit a key when you go AFK to show the viewers a looped video of, say, paint drying with text stating you're AFK over the top of it. You might also want to add text in that shows what music you're playing during the break, or real-time webcam footage of what's going on as you play. Let's set up the first scene. This will basically be DXtory's output of your gameplay. XSplit will use DXtory as a virtual camera, and all we need to do is go to Add, hit Add Camera, and choose DXtory Video 1 and resize it so it fits the entirety of the viewport. Now when you enter a game and hit F12, your game will appear in XSplit, at which point all you need to do is hit Broadcast and select your stream provider from the list, and your channel will go live. Just to expand on what happens when you hit F12 in game, we set direct show output in DXtory at the start of this guide. And basically what that does is allows DXtory to be a virtual camera for XSplit rather than recording to the hard drive. So basically what would have been recorded to the hard drive is now being sent to XSplit, or in essence streamed to XSplit, which then streams what it sees to your streaming provider at twitch.tv or own3d.tv. So right now what's happened is I've hit F12 in Dota 2, and DXtory is sending what it sees to XSplit, and assuming we've hit broadcast Own3D or Justin twitch.tv, that will then be live to your viewers. By the way, the recording quality here is extremely bad because I'm using Cam Studio. It'll actually be a lot better the way we've configured it, and what your viewers will see will be a hell of a lot better than all the compression artifacts that are going on here. So there we have it. That covers the basics of XSplit and DXtory and configuring your live stream. Hope it helps.